This is my channel Life in Love. In this story, 5 years ago he left her when she was pregnant. He disappeared from their lives. But after he is dead, the police come and said they soon would get his millions.
Sophia Reed had long grown used to living as though the past had been buried for good. Not forgotten, no, forgetting something like that was impossible, but buried, deep under layers of exhaustion, responsibility, and quiet love for her son. She was 28. She had dark chestnut hair, soft brown eyes, and that rare, almost invisible strength that is born in women not from happiness, but from surviving pain. She did not look broken. On the contrary, many people thought she seemed remarkably calm. But only Sophia knew how many times over the last 5 years she had had to put herself back together. Her son, Owen, sat on the floor in their small living room, building a city out of blocks and murmuring something to himself. The boy had brown hair, bright blue eyes, and a habit of furrowing his brow exactly like the man Sophia tried not to remember. 5 years earlier, she had loved Damian Cross. Loved him with the kind of love that happens only once, completely, foolishly, without caution. Damian had been a young millionaire, heir to a construction empire, handsome, decisive, quick in everything, and far too used to the idea that money could simplify anything. Back then, Sophia had thought there was a living heart behind his sharpness. Sometimes there really had been, in his sudden late-night drives to buy her favorite ice cream, in the way he silently draped his jacket over her shoulders, in the way he had once listened to her talk about books for 2 straight hours even though he hated reading. And then she got pregnant. In her 8th month. That was when Damian said the words that burned something inside her forever. "I don't want a child, Sophia. I'm not ready. And I'm not going to ruin my life over a mistake." A mistake. She had been standing by the window of his penthouse then, exhausted, swollen with his child, one hand resting on her stomach, unable to believe that the man who had kissed her forehead only days earlier could say it so calmly. "This isn't a mistake," she whispered. "Maybe not for you," he replied coldly. "But for me, it is." He left her life quickly. Too quickly for a man who had once promised he would stay. His lawyers sent her a large sum of money, which she never touched and eventually returned with a short note, "I don't need your charity." After that, Damian disappeared. Not a call. Not a letter. Not one question about their son. At first, Sophia waited. Then she stopped. She gave birth alone. Learned to live alone. Learned not to flinch when Owen, at 3 years old, asked, "Where's my dad?" Learned to say, "He's far away," without breaking inside. And now, 5 years later, on an ordinary November evening, someone knocked at her door. It was a heavy, official knock. Not a neighbor's. Not a friend's. Sophia tensed. Owen lifted his head from his blocks. "Mom, who is it?" "I don't know, sweetheart. Stay here." She opened the door, and at once felt her heart drop. 2 police officers stood on the porch. Beside them was a man in an expensive gray coat, around 50 years old, with a sad face that struck her as painfully familiar. A second later, she remembered. Michael Hayes. The Cross family attorney. The only person from Damian's world who had once looked at her not with contempt, but with something closer to sympathy. Sophia went pale. What happened? One of the officers removed his cap. "Miss Reed, we're very sorry. This morning Damian Cross died in a car accident." The world did not collapse right away. At first she simply stood there staring at them, as if the meaning of the words would not go all the way through. Dead. Damian. The man she had hated, remembered, cursed in the dark, and sometimes still dreamed about, young and alive. What, was all she managed? Michael lowered his gaze. Before his death, Mr. Cross finalized a will. "Your son's name is in it." Sophia felt her fingers turn cold. My son? Yes, the lawyer said quietly. Owen Reed is listed as the heir to a significant portion of Damian Cross's estate. From the living room came a child's voice. Mom? Sophia turned. Owen was already standing in the hallway, a red block in his hand, staring at the strangers with huge blue eyes. Michael looked at the boy, and gave the smallest visible start. Because there, in front of him, stood a small version of Damian. The same eyes. The same chin. The same crease between his brows. Sophia felt dizzy. 5 years of silence. 5 years of indifference. And now, heir to millions? It did not feel like justice. It felt like a cruel joke. No, she said hoarsely. There has to be some mistake. But Michael shook his head. I'm afraid there isn't. And that was only the first blow of the night. Owen got tired quickly from adult voices and the strange tension in the air. Sophia put him to bed earlier than usual, kissed his forehead, and sat beside him until he fell asleep. Only when his breathing became deep and steady did she return to the kitchen, where Michael Hayes was waiting with 2 cups of tea gone cold long ago. The police had already left. Their job had ended with the tragic announcement. The real nightmare was only beginning. Tell me everything, Sophia said quietly as she sat across from the lawyer. From the beginning. And without polished phrases. Michael nodded. He looked like a man who had not slept in a day. The accident happened early this morning. The car went off the road on a bend near the coast. The impact was too severe. He died before the ambulance arrived. Sophia stared at the table. She thought she should feel something. Relief. Anger. Pain. Anything recognizable. But inside there was only a strange emptiness. Was he alone? Michael hesitated. Yes. For some reason, that part hurt more than the rest. Alone. In his final moments, he had been alone. Just as she had been when he abandoned her and their child. She exhaled sharply. And why is Owen in the will? The attorney pulled a copy of the document from his leather folder and slid it toward her. 3 weeks ago, Damian completely rewrote it. The controlling shares, the trust fund, several properties, and a substantial portion of the liquid assets are to pass to his son upon adulthood. Until then, everything will remain protected in a trust and managed by appointed trustees. Sophia looked up. His son? He called him his son? Yes. How did he even know? Her voice shook. He never came. Never asked. 5 years, Mr. Hayes. 5 years. Michael looked away. He knew. Silence. What? She asked barely above a whisper. He knew from the beginning. Those words hit harder than the news of Damian's death. Sophia stood up slowly from the table, as though if she stayed seated any longer, she would suffocate. No. No, you don't understand. If he knew, he would have at least once, at least something. Sophia, Michael said quietly, he watched you. She turned so quickly the chair nearly tipped over. What? Not personally. Through people. Through security reports. Through me. Through you? Michael closed his eyes for a second, like a man who had not forgiven himself for a long time. He came to me a few months after Owen was born. Asked me to find out how you were doing. Then again. And again. He never interfered, but he knew where you worked, what preschool the child attended, what health issues he had in the first year. Sophia went pale. He watched? His own son? Like a stranger? I think, yes, Michael said heavily. And that was his greatest cowardice. Sophia turned away, wrapping her arms around herself. Images flashed through her mind, the strange anonymous help she had once received when Owen urgently needed surgery for appendicitis, the sudden rent debt that had been mysteriously cleared 2 years earlier, which the landlord had explained away as a system error, the new laptop that had arrived and signed on the very day her old one finally died. At the time, she had told herself they were coincidences. Or someone's kindness. Now her heart was pounding harder. Was that him? She whispered. Michael nodded silently. Sophia sat down again. Slowly. As if her bones could no longer hold her up. Why? She asked. If he didn't want us, why all of this? The lawyer looked down at the will. I think he wanted you, but much too late allowed himself to understand that he had already lost the right to come near. She laughed bitterly. How convenient. To live somewhere nearby, to help in secret, and not show up and say to his son, I'm your father. Not convenient, Michael said. Pathetic. Maybe cowardly. But not convenient. He changed a lot in the last year. People always say that after someone dies, it doesn't mean anything. Maybe not. But he left more than money. Michael took out another envelope. Heavy. Cream-colored. With her name on it. Sophia recognized the handwriting instantly. Damian. Her fingers trembled. What is this? A letter. For you. He instructed that it be delivered only after his death. Sophia stared at the envelope, unable to take it. 5 years ago, she would have given anything to receive even one letter from him. Now she wanted to throw it into the fire. But her hand reached for it anyway. She opened it slowly, as if another catastrophe might be waiting inside. On the first page there was only one sentence. If you're reading this, it means I was too late again. Sophia's throat tightened. Michael stood. I'll leave you alone. You're expected at the office tomorrow by noon. We'll need to formally open the inheritance case. Anne. He paused. Be ready. Once this is announced, everything will change. A lot of people will want to take from your son what was left to him. When the door closed behind him, the house became not just quiet, but oppressively empty. Sophia looked at the letter again. Then toward her son's room. Then she started reading. And with every line, it became harder to breathe. Sophia, asterisk you probably hate me. And you would be right, asterisk. Asterisk I want to say I didn't know about the baby, but that would be a lie. I knew. I knew almost immediately and still walked away. Not because you meant nothing to me. But because I turned out to be weaker than I thought I was, asterisk. Asterisk I grew up in a family where children were loved only when they were successful, and mistakes were treated like shame. My father spent his whole life repeating that family was a risk that got in the way of men building empires. I laughed at him, until I saw the pregnancy test and heard his voice inside my own head, asterisk. I was afraid. Asterisk not of the child. Not of you. But of the fact that with both of you, I would have to become a living human being instead of the machine I had been raised to be, asterisk. Asterisk that is not an excuse. It is only the diagnosis of my cowardice, asterisk. Asterisk then our son was born. I saw one photo of him. Just one. Michael found it through your friend's social media. And from that day, something inside me began to break, asterisk. Asterisk I watched him grow up. I knew about his first steps, preschool, appendicitis, your extra shifts, the fact that you sold your jewelry to pay for the car repair. Every time, I wanted to come. Every time, I understood that I had no right to burst into your life after all the hardest years had been carried by you alone, asterisk. So I did the only thing a half-man like me had the courage for, I helped from a distance. I do not expect forgiveness. Asterisk but I could not die without trying to do at least one thing right. Everything I have should belong to him. Not as payment. Not as apology. But as acknowledgement. He is my son, and I am proud of that, even if I never deserved to say it out loud. If you have the strength, tell him one day that I was not a monster. Just a very bad, weak man who understood far too late that he had lost the most real thing in his life. And one more thing. There is a folder in the safe in my office labeled for Owen. It does not only contain documents. It contains everything I never found the courage to send. Damian. By the time she reached the end, the lines had blurred. Sophia did not realize at first that she was crying. Not the way she had cried 5 years ago, when she had first been thrown into loneliness. That pain had been sharp, humiliating, raw. This was different, heavier, quieter, adult. The kind of pain you cry from not because of love, but because nothing can be changed anymore. Why? She whispered into the empty kitchen. Why did you understand so late? Of course, there was no answer. She sat at the table until deep into the night, reading the letter again and again, as if she hoped to find something between the lines, an excuse, a lie, a reason to hate him more cleanly. But the letter was brutally honest. And that made it worse. Toward dawn, she finally went into her son's room. Owen was asleep with his arms thrown wide, like a little tired sailor after a long journey. His stuffed fox with the torn ear lay beside his pillow, as always. Moonlight fell across his face, highlighting those blue eyes beneath closed lids, that same nose, that same line of mouth. Sophia sat slowly on the edge of the bed. He really was watching you, she whispered. All this time, he was watching. And the thought tore her heart in two. Morning gave her no time to be weak. She had barely managed to drop Owen at preschool and drive to Michael Hayes's office before she realized he had not been exaggerating. Reporters were already outside the building. Cameras. Microphones. Predatory eyes. Miss Reed. Is it true Damian Cross had an illegitimate son? Can you confirm the child is inheriting? There are rumors the Cross family plans to contest the will. Any comment? Sophia froze for a second, blinded by flashes. It was not fear for herself that hit her, but fear for Owen. A 5-year-old boy who had been building a city from blocks last night had now become a headline. A story. A weapon in someone else's fight over millions. Michael quickly led her through a side entrance. In the elevator he looked even grimmer than before. It's worse than I expected. What now? Damian's family is already here. His father, Charles Cross, and his daughter from a first marriage, Vanessa. They intend to argue the will is invalid. Sophia looked up. He has a sister. Half-sister. And I'm afraid she's especially hostile. The conference room was flawless, long table, glass walls, expensive coffee. But the atmosphere was so cold that Sophia felt a shiver run down her spine. Charles Cross stood by the window. Tall, silver-haired, with the face of a man used to commanding and never hearing the word no. Vanessa sat nearby, perfectly dressed, polished, and cold as steel. When Sophia entered, both looked at her not as the mother of their grandson and nephew, but as a problem. So this is you, Charles said. Michael stepped in immediately. Mr. Cross, I ask that you keep a respectful tone. The older man did not even look at him. My son made a mistake while he was alive. I will not allow that mistake to destroy what this family built. Sophia went pale. Mistake. The same word. Almost in the same tone as 5 years earlier. She straightened. My son is not a mistake. Vanessa crossed one leg over the other lazily. That remains to be proven. Sophia met her stare. You doubt he's Damian's son? I doubt a woman who appears out of nowhere with a child has no interests of her own. For a second, the room fell so silent that the hum of the air conditioner became audible. Michael opened his mouth to intervene, but Sophia beat him to it. I lived 5 years without a cent from your family. Without help. Without the cross name. And if this had ever been about money, I wouldn't have returned the transfers your son sent through his attorneys. So don't you dare look at me as if I came here to claw something out of you. For the first time, Charles really looked at her. But there was no respect in his eyes. Only irritation. We will contest the will, he said coldly. And if necessary, we will seek custody of the boy. Money like that should not be left in the hands of a woman who doesn't know how to manage it. Sophia felt the ground shift beneath her. What? This is about the future of an heir, Charles said. He may be better off with his proper family. Michael stood sharply. That is enough for today. My client will not discuss custody outside a courtroom. But Sophia barely heard him. They did not just want the money. They wanted Owen. And then she understood, the real war had only begun. That night, for the first time in years, Sophia locked every door and checked every window twice. It was absurd. No one was going to break in. Charles Cross would act differently, through lawyers, influence, pressure, connections. But fear does not listen to reason. Fear lives in the body. Owen noticed her anxiety almost immediately. He sat at the kitchen table, swinging his legs, drawing a house with a huge roof in green pencil. Mom, why are you sad? Sophia crouched beside him. Just grown-up problems, sweetheart. Are they bad? She wanted to say no, but could not. Sometimes people do bad things when they really want something they think belongs to them. Owen thought about that for a moment, then asked seriously, no one's going to take me away, right? Sophia's heart stopped. Why would you ask that? He shrugged, far too wisely for a 5-year-old. Because you picked me up early from school today and hugged me really tight. And also because you're smiling now, but not with your eyes. She turned away quickly so he would not see her tears. No one is taking you anywhere, she said firmly. I promise. But the promise shook inside her, because she already knew that against the Cross family, words alone meant nothing. 2 days later, Michael brought the DNA results. A 99.99% match. Legally, there was no longer any doubt. Owen was Damian Cross's son. And that was when the real pressure began. First came the online articles, Secret Child of a Billionaire Dynasty, Who is Sophia Reid and Why Did Her Son Inherit, Gold Digger or Damian Cross's Forgotten Love? Then photographers started waiting near her workplace. Then someone called Owen's preschool pretending to be a member of the press, trying to get information about him. After that, Sophia withdrew Owen and kept him home, taking unpaid leave. But none of that was the worst part. One rainy evening, when she and Owen were returning from the store, a black car was waiting outside their house. Vanessa Cross stepped out. She wore a long beige coat, her hair impeccably styled, and the expression of a woman who had come not to talk, but to assess. Sophia instinctively moved in front of her son. What are you doing here? Vanessa's gaze shifted to Owen, and for just a second, her cold face changed. Because the boy really did look painfully like Damian. The same eyes. The same watchfulness. I wanted to see him, she said. You've seen him. Leave. Owen gripped his mother's hand tighter. Vanessa stared at him for a long moment, then unexpectedly crouched down to his level. Hi, Owen. I knew your dad. Sophia stepped forward sharply. Don't. But the boy was already looking at the stranger with his serious blue eyes. He died, he asked. The air froze. Sophia had not yet found a way to tell him. She had kept putting it off, waiting for the right moment. And the moment had arrived in a wet driveway under gray rain, from the mouth of a stranger. Vanessa went pale. "Yes," she said quietly. "I'm sorry." Owen thought for a few seconds. Then asked, "Why didn't he live with us?" Sophia could not breathe. Vanessa looked up at her, and for the first time, there was no arrogance in her face. Only confusion. "Because grown-ups sometimes make very bad mistakes," she answered. Owen nodded as if, for now, that explanation was enough. Then he moved behind his mother again. Sophia expected Vanessa to turn cold and sharp once more. Instead, she stood slowly and said in a different voice, "I didn't know my father was going to seek custody. I found out that day in the office. And that is supposed to comfort me?" "No. But maybe you should know I don't agree with him." Sophia did not believe her. "Why?" Vanessa was silent for a long time. Then she looked at the house, the wet pavement, the boy hiding behind his mother. "Because my brother and I were raised by the same man," she said quietly. "And I know too well what happens to children in the Cross family when they are loved only for their name and inheritance." Sophia froze. That was not what she had expected to hear. "Then why did you behave that way in the office?" A bitter smile touched Vanessa's lips. "Because around my father, I automatically become who he made me. Cold. Hard. Safe." They looked at each other in the heavy silence of the rain. "I'm not asking you to trust me," Vanessa said. "But if this goes to court, I can testify against him." Sophia did not know what to say. A woman she had taken for an enemy was suddenly speaking with the voice of someone who knew the same family cruelty. "Why do you want to help?" Sophia asked. And then Vanessa said the words that sent a chill over her skin, "Because Damian came to me 2 days before he died. And he said that if anything happened to him, I was not to let our father ruin his son's life the way he ruined ours." The world tilted. "He came to see you?" Vanessa nodded. "And he wasn't empty-handed. He had a folder. For the boy." Sophia remembered the words in the letter. The folder. The safe. For Owen. Her heart began to pound faster. Vanessa opened her purse and took out a small silver key. "I think this opens the safe in Damian's office. He left it with me because he was afraid our father would get there first." She placed the key in Sophia's palm. "Take what your son's father left him. Before someone destroys it." And in that moment, for the first time, Sophia felt not only fear but something else too, something almost painful. Hope. Because it seemed that a dead man had still been trying to fight for his son. Even after death. Damian's office was in the old Cross family estate outside the city, a huge, beautiful, deeply lifeless mansion where the air itself seemed soaked in power, silence, and lovelessness. Sophia arrived there early the next morning with Michael, while Charles Cross was away at a business meeting. Formally, the attorney had the right to access documents before the estate was fully transferred. Informally, they had very little time. The house greeted them with heavy dimness and the scent of polished wood. "This is where he grew up," Michael said quietly. Sophia said nothing. Now it was easier to understand why Damian had become the man he had become. But easier did not mean forgivable. The office was surprisingly simple. No gaudy luxury. Dark bookcases, a large desk, framed photos of the coast, and a leather chair by the window. On the desk lay a child's drawing. Sophia stepped closer and froze. It was one of Owen's preschool drawings, a crooked sun, a house, a woman with long hair, and a little boy beside her. Underneath, in uneven letters, "Me and Mom." "How did he get this?" she whispered. Michael let out a heavy breath. "I once brought it to him. I shouldn't have, but I did. Sophia closed her eyes. So Damian had sat here, in this cold office, looking at a drawing made by the son he had deprived of a father. The safe was hidden behind a painting. The silver key fit immediately. Inside was a thick blue folder labeled, "For Owen," and several envelopes. Sophia opened it with trembling hands. It contained more than documents. It contained an entire life lived from a distance. Owen's first hospital photo, printed out, the corner slightly bent. Pictures from the playground, clearly taken secretly. Copies of medical reports. His drawings. Notes: 3 years old, loves foxes and strawberry yogurt. 4 years old, afraid of thunder, went to preschool without crying today, thought about him all day. And letters. Many letters. One for every birthday. Sophia sank into the chair, unable to feel her legs. Oh God. Michael stood at the window, deliberately turned away, as if he understood that this part she had to live through alone. She opened the first letter. Owen, today you are 1. You can't read yet, and maybe you never will see this letter. But I'm writing it anyway, because otherwise I think I'll lose my mind, I have no right to call myself your father. A father would be there when your teeth come in, when you're sick, when you take your first step. I saw none of it. And it is entirely my fault, But today I watched a video of you laughing, and for the first time in my life I envied not someone else's success, but time. I would give everything to take back even one day and not walk away from you and your mother, Sophia pressed the letter to her lips. The next one. You are 2. You look far too much like me, and somehow that both terrifies me and makes me happy. I hope you inherit everything important from your mother, and from me only the eyes, The next. You are 3. I saw you fall on the playground, get back up, and not cry. I wanted to run to you. I wanted to so badly. But by now I have gone too far in my cowardice, The next. You are 4. I know you love dinosaurs and hate broccoli. That is a shameful amount of knowledge for a man who is not beside you. But I keep every small thing, because it is the only way I know how to belong, even from a distance, The last letter was dated a month before the crash. You are almost 5. I don't want to be a shadow anymore. I don't know how you'll look at me if I ever knock on your door. Maybe Sophia will slam it in my face. And she would be right. But I'm tired of living beside my own happiness like a thief, If I still don't make it in time, then let you inherit not only my wealth. Let you inherit the truth, I loved you. Late, badly, from far away, unworthily, but I loved you. And your mother, I think I loved my whole life, I just understood it only after I turned her love into ruins, Tears ran down Sophia's face. Not because of reconciliation. Not because of forgiveness. Because everything had turned out to be far more complicated than the simple story of a bad man and an abandoned woman. He really had been a coward. But not an empty one. He had lived with that guilt for all 5 years. And in the only way he knew how, he had tried to remain near them like a shadow. At the bottom of the folder lay a flash drive. On it was a label, for Sophia and Owen. If I find the courage, delete. If not, play, Michael came closer. Do you want me to step out? Sophia shook her head. There was nothing left to protect. They loaded the video on Damian's laptop, still sitting on the desk. The screen lit up. And there he was. Alive. Tired. Thinner. Wearing a plain gray shirt, stripped of his usual confidence. For a few seconds he only looked into the camera, as if gathering strength. If you're watching this, it means I didn't make it, he said at last. Sophia's hands began to shake. Sophia. I'm not asking forgiveness. A man like me doesn't get to ask for that in words. Only in actions. And it looks like I was too late for that too. He let out a slow breath. I was going to come. I really was. I had a ticket, an appointment with a therapist, and a conversation planned out that I rewrote 10 times like an idiot. I wasn't afraid of you. I was afraid that Owen would look at me and I'd understand all at once how much I had already lost forever. Damian passed a hand over his face. If you let him know about me, tell him one thing. Not that I was rich. Not that I left him everything. Tell him I was a weak man who understood the price of love much too late. And tell him never to become like me. Then he looked directly into the camera, as if he were seeing both of them. Owen. I don't know what your voice sounds like. I don't know whether you love soccer or books, whether you're afraid of the dark, or who your best friend is. But I know that you exist. And that alone is enough to keep my life from being entirely empty. Then he added, very quietly, and if you have your mother's heart, take care of her. She's the best thing I ever destroyed. The video ended. And at that exact moment, footsteps sounded in the hallway. Heavy. Quick. Charles Cross had come back early. The office door flew open without a knock. Charles Cross entered sharply, like a storm entering a room, without asking, without pausing, without acknowledging anyone else's space. 2 security men stood behind him. His gaze fell at once on the open safe, the folder on the desk, and Sophia's frozen face. I knew it, he said coldly. You came here to rummage through my son's things. Things he left to his son, Sophia replied sharply, rising to her feet. The older man went pale with anger. Don't you dare. But before he could take another step, Damian's voice suddenly sounded again from the laptop speakers. Michael had not noticed the video had not fully ended. May he never become like me. Everyone froze. Charles slowly turned his head toward the screen. The next few seconds felt almost unreal. The voice of his dead son echoed through his own house, in his own room, before people he had always controlled. And in that voice there was no fear. Only exhaustion and a truth that could no longer be punished. If you are watching this after my death, then my father is probably still trying to control even what little I managed to leave behind. Charles went still. Sophia and Michael exchanged a glance. The video went on. Then I'll say this plainly, because while alive I stayed silent for too long. Father, if you hear this, know that everything you called strength was cowardice. Everything you taught me about family, love, and heirs turned me into a man who abandoned the woman he loved and the child he should have protected. That is your fault no less than mine. But I will be the one to answer for it. So neither you, nor your lawyers, nor your name will come near my son. Charles's jaw tightened. He did not breathe. He simply stood there listening to his own sentence, delivered by the son he could no longer silence. If you try to take Owen's inheritance or force your way into his life, there are additional documents in the folder. Michael knows. They will go to the press and the board of directors. There is enough there to destroy your reputation completely. Michael straightened slowly. Sophia turned to him. He nodded. It's true. Damian gave me copies of internal company archives and personal records. If Mr. Cross starts a legal war against a child, everything becomes public. For the first time, Charles's face changed. Not from grief. From fear. He wouldn't dare, he said hoarsely. He already did, Sophia answered quietly. Even after death. The video ended for real. Silence settled over the office, thick and heavy. Then another voice spoke. And he was right. Vanessa stood in the doorway. No one had heard her come in. She walked farther into the room, looking only at her father. "Enough," she said. "You already took his life while he was still alive. Don't touch his son." Charles turned sharply toward her. "You too? Against your own family?" Vanessa gave a short, terrible smile. "No. For the first time, for it." The older man looked from his daughter to Sophia, then to the folder, then to the frozen image of his dead son on the laptop screen. In that moment he must have understood he had lost. Not even legally first, but morally. His power ended where his dead son chose not him, but his own child. "This isn't over," he said darkly. "For you, maybe," Michael replied. "But not for the boy." Charles left without slamming the door. Somehow that felt more frightening than a scene. When his footsteps faded, Sophia sat back down in the chair as if all her strength had suddenly drained away in the middle of the fight. Vanessa stepped closer. "He'll back down," she said. "Not out of decency. Out of fear." "How do you know?" "Because shame is what he fears most. And Damian always knew that." Sophia looked at the folder. Was he really going to come? Vanessa lowered her eyes. "Yes. He came to see me the evening before the trip. Drunk, not on alcohol, but on fear. He said, either I knock on their door this weekend, or I spend the rest of my life dead while still breathing." I had never seen him like that. Sophia's eyes stung again. So close. He had been so close. A few more days, and maybe Owen would have met his father alive instead of on a screen. But fate had decided otherwise. "There's something else in the folder," Vanessa said quietly, sorting through the papers. "Look." It was a contract. Not about the inheritance. About a foundation. Damian had already arranged for a charitable center to be created for mothers with children left without support, and he had ordered it to be named after Sophia Reed. Sophia stared at the words, unable to believe them. "What?" Michael scanned the papers quickly and looked up. "It's fully signed. Legally airtight. The foundation will begin operating after the inheritance process is completed." Sophia could not speak. He had not been thinking only of his son. He had been thinking of her too. Of the pain he had forced her through. And apparently, he had tried to turn at least part of his guilt into future protection for someone else. It did not erase the past. But it was real. Living. A final effort by a man who had still tried to become better, even if far too late. And for the first time in all these days, Sophia thought not about what he had taken from them, but about what, perhaps, he had managed to give back. At least to Owen. At least the truth. The legal war Sophia had feared ended faster than she had expected. Charles Cross did not file a lawsuit. A week later, his representative sent a dry official letter. The family would not contest the DNA results and recognized Owen's right to inherit under Damian Cross's will. No apology. No warmth. No attempt to repair anything. But for Sophia, that was enough. Because the most important thing remained with her, her son, his name, and his right to a future he would not have to pay for with himself. Winter gave way to spring. The scandal in the press slowly faded. Journalists found new stories. The internet forgot. People moved on. And Sophia and Owen began learning how to live in a new reality where the word heir no longer sounded like a threat. They did not move into a mansion or a glittering penthouse. Sophia deliberately refused anything that would make her son's life feel borrowed or artificial. Instead, they bought a warm, bright house not far from the ocean, with a garden, a swing, and a large child's room where Owen could build as many cities from blocks as he wanted. The foundation Damian had created also began its work. For a long time, Sophia wanted nothing to do with it. She thought it would hurt too much. But one day she came to the first meeting with women who were being offered legal help, counseling, and temporary housing, and she realized that if she walked away, his final attempt to do something right would lose all meaning. So she stayed. And little by little, the name that had once brought her pain began to mean not only betrayal, but rescue for others. Owen grew. He turned out to be one of those rare children in whom a mother's tenderness and a father's quiet strength live side by side. He still loved foxes, still hated broccoli, and still asked the kinds of questions that made Sophia laugh one minute and cry the next. One evening, shortly after his 6th birthday, they sat together on the porch. The wind moved the curtains, and the sky over the ocean was pink with sunset. Owen held a box Sophia had not been able to give him for a long time. Inside were Damian's letters. Not all of them. For now, only one, the simplest one, written on his 1st birthday. "Is this from my dad?" the boy asked softly. Sophia nodded. He was quiet for a long time, studying the envelope. Did he love me? Her heart clenched. There it was. The most important question. For months she had been learning how to separate the truth from her own pain, for this moment. Yes, she said honestly. He did. Not the way he should have. Not the way it was right. But he did. Owen frowned. Then why didn't he come? Sophia looked toward the ocean. Because grown-ups sometimes make very bad mistakes and then become afraid it's too late to fix them. Was it too late? She thought for a long moment. Then answered, for some things, yes. But not for leaving you the truth. Owen nodded, accepting the answer with the seriousness that always frightened and amazed her at the same time. I want to read all the letters later. You will. When you're ready. He pressed the envelope to his chest and then asked unexpectedly, "Did you forgive him?" Sophia had not expected that. She smiled faintly. Not completely. But I stopped living as if pain was the only thing he left behind. Owen seemed to understand in his own way. Then he slipped off the swing, came over, and hugged her tightly. I love you, Mom. She held him close, breathing in the scent of sun, wind, and childhood. I love you too, sweetheart. A few months later, Vanessa came to visit for the first time, not on business. No expensive coat. No mask of coldness. She brought Owen an old music box that had once belonged to her and Damian's mother. It should be his, she said. That was how a strange, careful, but real bond entered their lives, not with the Cross dynasty, but with the few people in it who were tired of living by the rules of lovelessness. And a year later, at the opening of a new wing of the Support Center for Mothers, Sophia stood on a stage speaking before dozens of women, employees, and reporters. Owen sat in the front row beside Vanessa and Michael, serious in a little blue blazer, listening closely. Sometimes the heaviest inheritance is not money, Sophia said. It is pain, silence, and the mistakes adults pass on. But sometimes a person manages to do one last important thing: stop that chain. And then their story ends not only in loss, but in hope. After the speech, Owen ran up to her and took her hand. Mom, you're crying. She laughed through her tears. A little. Are they good tears? Sophia looked at the sign on the building, at the people who would now find help there, at the son no one had managed to take from her, and at the bright sky overhead, as if even after the darkest stories, life still knew how to begin again. Yes, she said. Very good tears. That evening, when they came home, Owen fell asleep on the couch with a book in his hands. Sophia covered him with a blanket and suddenly noticed a folded piece of paper slip out from the book. Uneven letters in blue pencil. Asterisk Dad. I didn't know you. But I think you were not only bad. I will take care of Mom. And I will try to be brave, asterisk. Sophia's lips trembled. She gently folded the note again and tucked it back, then kissed her son's hair. Outside, the ocean murmured. Inside the house, it was quiet, warm, and peaceful. Not because this story had not known pain, but because pain had finally stopped being the ending. And perhaps that was the truest inheritance of all. Not millions, but the chance to make sure a child grows up not in the shadow of other people's mistakes, but in the light of the love that still managed, somehow, to reach him. The end.
This story shows that adult mistakes hurt children. Money cannot replace love and care, but even late truth can change life, and people can choose to be better.